now.
All right. Thank you, Jocelyn. Good morning, everybody. We have, for the last few months, we've allowed a sponsor of TWIG to have a few minutes at the beginning of every meeting. And today we have a video to play in place of a sponsor announcement. So Gracelyn, do you have that ready to go?
I do, yes. So the Academy for Park and Recreation Administration, as well as the National Recreation and Park Association, it's a mouthful, has no surprise recognized Tennessee State Parks as one of the best in the nation. So Tennessee State Parks put together this video just highlighting their successes and just, how beautiful of a park system we have. And it's, something to be enormously proud of. So it's a quick video, but I will go ahead and share my screen. So let me know if you have any issues seeing this. Everybody see it okay?
Looks good.
Awesome. Let's see.
In Tennessee, the parks we love and protect are so much more than rolling hills and lush greenery. Our parks are a place for disconnecting from life's worries and reconnecting with each other. With nationally recognized resources and world-class facilities, our 56 biodiverse parks are a home away from home for every person we serve. As a high-quality CAPRA-accredited park system, our staff are some of the best in the nation, and their wide variety of skills provide unique wow moments for each of our visitors. Every park ranger and manager is a commissioned officer and certified interpretive guide, and the majority of our operations are run without concessionaires, ensuring the best people for the best experience.
Guest satisfaction is a core value at Tennessee State Parks, so we implemented a new real-time traffic management system that allows us to staff more effectively and better serve our visitors. Our guest satisfaction program also tracks visitor and stakeholder feedback, meaning we get constant improvement.
My job is to make college easier because students have a lot on them.
And it's always at the top of our mind.
In Tennessee, preserving our history really means something to us. Our renovation efforts to 1930s era cabins give our visitors the amenities they expect while still paying homage to the character of each cabin. When the Nashville area was devastated by a tornado in 2020, we were able to quickly reopen trails and sell downed timber to reinvest funds in restoration projects. We've spent several years improving the safety and visitor experience at Cummins Falls. This nationally recognized waterfall suffered from overcrowding and flash flooding. We installed water level monitors and early warning protocols. We also implemented safety video screenings and permits to improve the visitor experience while better protecting the resource.
Our preemptive support of natural resource conservation has helped us prevent white nose syndrome from spreading amongst bat populations in our caves, rejuvenate exhausted natural beauties, and restore habitats through prescribed burns.
As we continue implementing new programs and expanding opportunities, Tennessee State Parks are committed to equity and accessibility.
As one of only 7 park systems with no entry fees, we are committed to maintaining free admission and growing outreach to a new set of visitors.
We're prioritizing partnerships with organizations like Abundant Life, who provide opportunities for minority groups to find community in the outdoors. Our parks are also a driving force for the economic development of disadvantaged rural counties.
The focus of parks sending people to communities like ours has helped us move off the distressed counties list.
Looking to the future, we're increasing literacy through early childhood intervention. We're offering outdoor classrooms, storybook trails, and partnering with our conservancy to provide transportation grants for underfunded schools. With public health at the forefront of our commitments, we work with local schools and healthcare professionals to promote nature as a mental and physical health resource. We are teaching children to love real food and encouraging our staff to live healthy, mindful lives.
Like many park systems, we were inundated by people in search of safe activities during the pandemic. This drove the need for a short-term closure and reset period, which we used to develop procedures, purchase safety equipment, create signage, and prepare our visitors for a safe return to the outdoors.
Parks shifted to virtual programming at the start of the closure to ensure we could still serve those in need. We reopened shortly thereafter, allowing Tennessee state parks to serve as a refuge throughout the pandemic. When vacations were canceled, schools and gyms were closed, and we were all navigating a year of uncertainty, Tennessee state parks were there, a place for disconnecting from life's worries, a place for reconnecting with each other, and a home away from home. Tennessee state parks, for the love of Tennessee.
All right. It is definitely something to be proud of. I love our state parks so much, and they're just absolutely beautiful. So it was great to see. And Renee, I will pass it back over to you.
Thank you, Gracelyn. That was such a nice video. All right, so now on to our main program event. Jessica Gossett, Park Ranger at T.O. Fuller State Park. She will share her work with developing interpretive programs at the park, expanding their offerings to embed environmental justice awareness and African American storytelling traditions in the youth programs, working with partners such as Chucalissa to deepen their Indigenous history and cultural programming, and increasing their conservation and education with new offerings such as seasonal birding programs. Jessica is a Memphis native and a graduate of University of Tennessee. Her career as a Tennessee Park Ranger began in 2017. We are really excited to hear about your story.
Thank you. So let's see, a quick trivia or follow up on the trivia about Cedars of Lebanon. The cool thing about Cedars of Lebanon is that it's covered in cedar glades, and those cedar glades create microclimates in which it's a desert-like environment in a lot of parts of the park. So no, they may not have traditional sources of water, but they do have a very cool ecology. So if you haven't had a chance to go to Cedars, I highly recommend it. Now, I think the screen is under me now. Picture. So if everybody can see, okay. So I'll just start this from the beginning. Okay, so thank you for coming today. What I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about what and where T.O. Fuller is in the state of Tennessee, a little bit about the history, a little bit about rangering, and then some of the tip of the iceberg of some of the programs that we offer here. So one of the questions that I get often is, what do you all do anyway as a park ranger? And so one of the main things that people see is, well, I know you talk to the campers. I know that you protect the environment, but there's a couple of other things we do. And one of those things we do is we share about the history of the place or the places that we're protecting. So that could be the story of the park that we're actively protecting. That could be the story of the region of West Tennessee in particular, or we are asked to go and do programs to talk about the history of the entire state in different time periods and stuff like that. So here's part of that. So T.O. Fuller State Park was founded in 1938. It was one of the first 4 parks in the Tennessee State Park system, and it was unique, not just in the Tennessee State Park system, but also in the country, as being one of 2 parks in the United States open to people of African descent. So it was a segregated park. The original name of the park was the Shelby County Negro Park. To kind of give you an idea of the time period that this establishment took place in. So the park was named after Thomas Oscar Fuller. I have a nice picture of him here. It came from one of his autobiographies. He was a prolific writer. So Thomas Oscar Fuller.
Jessica,
Thomas Oscar.
I hate to
Yes.
interrupt, but we can't see your screen right now.
Oh, that's weird. Okay. Well, what I can do is I'll just talk and then hopefully it will pop up at some point. It's probably my internet connection. So I don't know what to do about that. Everybody can hear me fine, right?
Yeah, and we can see you, so that's great. And this has been amazing.
Okay, well, we'll just go from there. I can look at the slides. Just a little bit about Thomas Oscar Fuller. He was a child of that first generation out from slavery. And so they had a lot of work to do, and they instilled that in their children. His parents in particular bought their freedom in North Carolina and started several businesses, as well as were politically involved in their local community. So it wasn't a surprise that Thomas Oscar Fuller became one of the first African-American state senators in the country, because he had that ethos, those values placed in him from an early age. In fact, one of the things he highlights in his autobiography is the influence of his mother and how she pushed him and his siblings to take education seriously. So he took his mother's advice and not only took his education seriously, but he also was a teacher. He was a principal. He also got a doctorate degree. So he wasn't Mr. Thomas Oscar Fuller in the early 1900s. He was Dr. Thomas Oscar Fuller. So unfortunately, it is during that time frame where a lot of the African-American lawmakers, that original group of lawmakers, were pushed out of politics. And so he got pushed out of the North Carolina Senate, and he received an invitation from a church in Memphis, Tennessee, to come and preach, because he was also a preacher. So in 1900, he moved to Memphis, Tennessee, and was heavily influential, not just in the arena of education, but also in making sure that there were places for people of African descent to recreate safely in. And so in 1942, the park was named after Thomas Oscar Fuller from that original name, and just in time because he passed away shortly after the park was named after him. So another thing that I want to highlight about the establishment of the park is that it was part of the initial group of parks, federal and state, that were established by the Civilian Conservation Corps. So that was that work program, Depression era work program, to get the young men back into work to help support their families, but also serve their country by contributing to the long-term success of that. And for the Civilian Conservation Corps in particular, that was establishing those recreational areas for the average family. So young men mostly from Memphis, Tennessee, helped establish the original foundations of the park. Now, I know that everybody here, regardless of whether you work for TWIG or not, knows a park ranger. I wish I could show you the screen so you can see the slide. I will tell you who that is. That is Park Ranger John Smith from Yogi Bear. So when the image or the mythos of park rangering comes to mind, typically what people think about is Ranger John Smith chasing after Yogi Bear and Boo Boo, or as the MPD officers like to tease me about, hey, Boo Boo, get over here. That is typically who people think about when they think of park rangers. Here in Tennessee state parks, yes, some of us may or may not interact with bears. It's mostly in East Tennessee. I don't have to worry about that here in West Tennessee and Memphis. But we wear many hats. That's that classic campaign hat, but also we can take that off figuratively and literally and put on our firefighting hats. That could be, we could put on our conservation hats. We could put on a customer service hat. We have some rangers that are mounted here at Teofula. There used to be a mounted patrol. And so one of the previous rangers got to speak with him about the adventures he had while he was a mounted ranger here at Teofula State Park, one of the few in the crowd. So there's several hats that we can wear. We also rescue animals. So if you see a park ranger picking up a turtle from the middle row, yes, we do that. We also give safety guidelines for people who are interested in rescuing turtles. So that is part of our ethos. And I state that because I had a picture of a former park ranger, Torian Harris, helping a turtle cross the road. Another thing to keep in mind is many of our rangers help rehabilitate wild animals that have been injured. So referring back to the trivia question about Reelfoot Lake State Park, Reelfoot Lake State Park has and several others has a rehabilitation program for birds of prey. So birds of prey who could be injured in a variety of different accidents that they survive are referred to the Tennessee State Park system with people who are either trained, already have the training to take care of them, or are guided by the people so our seasonal rangers to take care of birds of prey and possibly rehabilitate them. And if they are rehabilitated or healed from their injuries, they are released back to where they need to be, which is wild. If it cannot be rehabilitated, we take care of them in perpetuity to the very end as best as we can. Another hat, and it'll be the last hat that I really stress on before I move on to the rest of the presentation, is beekeeping. So that's not something that you typically think of when you think of park rangers, but we have a bee program here at Tennessee State Parks. So many of our park rangers have trained to be beekeepers and are actively taking care of bees. One of my partners here, Dakota Muller, is our resident beekeeper. We got our bees this year, and so we have 2 hives that he takes care of and is actually getting them ready for these wintering months for them. Now, the last hat that I want to talk about is our or our education hat. So another question that I get a lot is, you're an interpreter, so that means you speak Spanish, right? And that is a good question. Some of our rangers do speak Spanish, but when we talk about interpretation, or as the video that we had the opportunity to watch, when we talk about interpretation, we're talking about a very specific communication process or an art form that connects people with places, history, and culture here in the 56 parks, state parks that we have in the state of Tennessee. So I want to read the official definition of interpretation from the National Association for Interpretation, which defines interpretation as a mission-based communication process that forges emotional and intellectual connections between the interests of the audience and the meanings inherent in the resource or the place. So that's the official definition. Softer definition that I use when I'm talking to park visitors is interpretation is simply the art of connecting you to here. I interact with a variety of different folks. They come from a variety of different backgrounds, and the questions that come up, especially when working with kids, is why should we care? Why should we care? And so our jobs as interpreters as park rangers and our seasonal interpreters do is to connect a diverse group of people, the diverse group of people that interact with us, that come to our parks, that look to recreate or recreate themselves in outdoor wild settings. Our job is to connect them with that place so that they care not just about the immediate places that we protect, but when they go back home, to take that back home and to look around and see their surroundings in a very different light. And so the best way we do that is through stories. Another way we do that is through recreational events or opportunities like hiking. Another way we do that is through living history. Now, how does that feed here back into here at T.O. Fuller? So at T.O. Fuller State Park, our immediate goals is to continue to connect the communities we immediately serve, which is the Westwood area, the Boxtown area, Riverside neighborhood area, to this park that was for my parents and for my grandparents, the only place that they could go to recreate safely. And my parents were teenagers in the 70s. My grandparents were small children when this park was founded, to kind of give you an idea. And so there was a different time, different place, and different reasons to connect here than maybe now. And so what we do our best to do is to stay modern, stay connected with our current audience, which is folks that live around us now and the children who come to visit us, stay connected with them, but still also tell the story of T.O. Fuller State Park and get them engaged and involved, not just to come out here and hike, but also with some of the environmental questions. I'm going to say, now I'm not going to say issues, I'm going to say questions that we have, especially here in West Tennessee. So earlier this year, there was a conversation, our neighbors had a conversation about a pipeline. At the time, there were plans for a pipeline to be routed through the neighboring areas from a refinery that's not too far from the park. And a lot of our neighbors came to ask us, well, what are you doing about this as the park rangers? And there's not really much that we can do in our official capacity. And there's some things that it is not appropriate for us to address, but we can help facilitate conversations. And the way that I did that this year, and I've only been back roughly a year at T.O. Fuller State Park, is by incorporating environmental justice into our youth programs and specifically into our junior ranger program. So just to review, what is environmental justice? There were a couple of definitions. I chose to use the one from the Department of Energy. And the definition from the Department of Energy is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement. Enforcement's a special word for me since I get to have that hat or that role here as a park ranger of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. And so to follow up with the questions that our neighbors were asking, that the children who come to our park and see some of the things leading up to getting here, to follow up with the questions that were being asked, what we did is we incorporated that into our junior ranger program this year. So our theme was protecting local waterways. And with the group of children that we typically have for our junior ranger camp, we have to start from scratch. So we don't start off with, we're doing environmental justice today. We start off with, do you know where you are? Do you know the local waterways that are around you. Are you familiar with Nunkana Creek or the Wolf River or the wetlands that are historic to the West Tennessee area and found all over the state of Tennessee? Nashville is an area that historically has wetlands, and the lower parts of the Cumberland Plateau and Appalachian Mountains also have wetlands. So wetlands are no stranger or not a special, not special, that's not the word I want, not a uncommon feature in the state of Tennessee. The kids don't even know what a wetland is. So we have to go over that, go over why that's important, go over where we even get our water from. So here in Memphis, we get our water from the Memphis Sands Aquifer. So we'll talk about, well, what's an aquifer? And then building each day. So it was a 5-day program. We built each day off of that. And so at the end of the program, when we graduated, the junior rangers officially, we could have them tell their parents in the group what they learned. Why is protecting water important? Why some communities may be more susceptible to water pollution, and what that child could do. You can't do everything. Nobody can do everything, but where that child can start and where that family can start with getting more involved, not just in the questions, not just in the questioning process, but also in the protection part. And so we did what we call citizen scientist projects. So kids collected data and wrote down their observations. We also went to a wetland. At our sister park, which is Mimi Shelby Forest, and canoed in Eagle Lake. So that was pretty, they had a good time with that. It was a very, very good adventure for our junior rangers. I'm just gonna keep pushing the slides. Maybe some of y'all will eventually see them. So another thing that we do is we work with our partners. So we don't just work with the individual residents that are in the communities around us. We also work with the organizations. So one of the organizations is the Chucalissa site that is on the park, managed by the University of Memphis. So cool trivia about Chucalissa is that there were some young men with the CCC, with the Civilian Conservation Corps, some young Black men from Memphis, Tennessee. They were excavating one of the bluffs for a pool, and they came across human remains and other artifacts and realized that they had stumbled upon a significant site. That site ended up being Chucalissa, which means abandoned house or village in Choctaw, if I remember correctly. And not only was it a burial site, but it was also a mound site and a village site. And so we work with our partners at Chucalissa. The most recent time was with Archaeology Day in October. And so what we do and what we did for this particular Archaeology Day that we hadn't done before is have flint napping. So we're slowly building up and expanding our Indigenous programming. And so our one of our seasonals, Mr. Roman Russian, a nearby college student, asked for a flint napping book. And Kit actually spent two and a half months practicing, making sure he could actually do it and talk about the history of flint napping and some of the different styles of arrowheads that you can find in the area. And then did that at that Archaeology Day event at Chucalissa. He also did a hike and pointed out some of the plants, the native plants that the indigenous folks who for that particular site were the ancestors of the Choctaw and Chickasaw nations, the last group of folks that had claim to the area that Memphis sits on. So pointed out the plants that would have been of use to those indigenous ancestors. And then Another partner we work with is the Memphis Police Department, or MPD, as we lovingly call them. And so the last event was the Trunk or Treat program. And so we set up the truck. My partner got to go, Dakota Muller, decorated the truck, passed out candy, interacted with a lot of kids from all over the city of Memphis. So that's a very fun program that we got to do with the Memphis Police Department. Then on that same day, because we're very ambitious, we had a folk tales program. So this program was specifically called Marshmallows, Moons, and Mayhem. And it was a African-American folktale program with Halloween, for the Halloween holiday on the 30th. So we had our local radio personality, Mother Wit, Miss Joyce Scott, who also works at the park as an interpreter, tell her stories. Now, the thing that I want you to keep in mind about Mother Wit is that she is a master storyteller. So she has her experience from being a radio personality, but she also is a speculative fiction writer. And so she writes stories that feature, and one story can feature a little science fiction, a little magical realism, maybe some elements of fantasy, and a little drop of morals or ethics mixed all into it, because Mother Wit tells stories with morals. Those are her own. She tells original stories. Another thing that we had at this particular event is a guest interpreter who is a native of the Memphis area, and his name is Jesse Gossett. He is my father. So my father grew up in this area, and he was when he was growing up, his father told him stories, all kinds of stories, his mother and his father, about the folks that raised them, who were some of the last folks that remembered the tail end of slavery and the early parts of Reconstruction. They told them stories about Brer Rabbit and John the Conqueror. Now, the cool thing about John Conqueror that I want you to keep in mind is we are very familiar with Brer Rabbit, or Brother Rabbit, who is a trickster, not always the most pleasant character, but he always is a fun character to tell stories about in his antics. But those were the stories that were widely available for a reason, because under that Brer or Brother Rabbit story was another story that was not told. And all these stories date back to the enslavement of people of African descent. So up underneath that Brother Rabbit story was High John the Conqueror. That's not the story that you would tell in front of the people that owned you, because they were stories about a slave, an enslaved individual who was a trickster, who got away with not working ever too hard, taking, or what he would have called is liberating things from massa or master, and getting out of trouble just in the nick of time. So those are some of the stories that my father grew up hearing. And so he told those, a few of those at that event. And then I followed up with stories, a few other stories from the broader African-American storytelling tradition about boo hags, which are scary witches that come visit you in the night and basically take advantage of you by riding you like a horse. They're nightmares. I told a story about how you get rid of them. And then also a story about how barred owls, or hoot owls, as we colloquially call them, came to be. And those are some very old stories. And so we're weaving this back into, it's always been here at Teal Park, but we were weaving these environmental justice themes and these African-American storytelling traditions openly and back into our programming, with not just the children that come visit us, but also their parents and the wider families and our campers. And so it's a lot of fun. So we're hoping to to expand on that even more this upcoming year. So where do we go from here? So some of the new programming that we have are those citizen scientist programs or conservation programs. So what's the citizen scientist program? Citizen scientist program, the average person goes out and collects data and contributes that data to a national or international project, even an international project that professional scientists are working on, but they need the everyday person to help with. And so one of the things about T.O. Fuller State Park that people don't typically know is that this is a great place for birding programs. And I say that because of the wetlands, that the permanent wetlands that border the park, as well as the ephemeral or seasonal wetlands that we have in the woods, in the forested areas of the park. So we've been experimenting only over this past month, really, with deepening our conservation programs through birding. And so we now have Miss Out Birding 101 program. So we've done it several times with some of our field trip groups, specifically with Whitehaven Elementary. We got a classroom set of binoculars. We got 25 binoculars, and we're probably going to get about 25 more and pass them out. We go over the basics of birding, which is like the anatomy of birds, the types of birds that you can find here in West Tennessee at different times of year. Field etiquette. So wearing your hot pink jacket may not be the best thing to do when you're going out birding. As our hunters would tell you, you have to wear things that blend in with the environment. So we go over all of that, and then we take them out to the field. And we've had a lot of success. I asked the children at the end with our field trip groups, well, do you like the program? Was it okay? What do we need to change? Did you like binoculars? And overwhelmingly, the kids have said yes. The teachers have said yes. The parents have said yes, because we've had a few homeschool groups to come as well. And so the only thing that they have ever asked us to do was to spend more time on how to use binoculars, themselves. That's it. That's the only thing they've asked us to do. So our upcoming program will do a little field work. We're building off of the 101 series. Each one is going to be a little different based off the season, as well as the birds that we're going to be seeing and the activities. So we're still going to do some field work, but this upcoming program on the 17th, we're going to focus on winter feeding for birds. So we're going to make what's called blackbird biscuits. We're going to make healthy treats for our wintering birds. Specific to the Chucalissa site, what we are doing is we have not yet, and a key word there is yet, we have not yet had success with this, but we're reaching out to our local and regional Indigenous organizations and inviting them here to T.O. Fuller State Park and to the Chucalissa site, and making sure they know that they are welcome and that we are going to do our best to tell these stories of their ancestors, and not just in the prehistoric Mississippi and the woodland periods, but also during the historic period. So one of the things that we haven't talked about that we will be doing a better job with is talking about the Trail of Tears. And the Trail of Tears, one of the routes, two of the routes actually, passed by the city of Memphis and through the city of Memphis. So one of the overland routes passed through the city of Memphis, and there are markers in the city showing where that route was. And then there was a water route that went by the city as well. And so we're going to do a better job telling that story and the consequences of the Indian Removal Act. But also, again, just making sure we invite our Indigenous neighbors regionally as well as locally out. And so hopefully next year what we'll do is we'll do programming around in November around Native American Heritage Month, showing some films, having hikes, talking about that historic period as well as the prehistoric period, and hopefully developing a better relationship at T.O. Fuller State Park with our regional folks. So that is all I have. I'm sorry that y'all couldn't see the slides. I can email them out to Ms. Jocelyn so that you have them. And if you have any questions, I'm ready and willing to answer them.
Yes, we do. And thank you so much, Jessica. Those stories that we heard, the information that we got, and just like the range of things that you are doing at the state parks. My goodness, like I have learned so much, getting lots of great messages in the chat about we all want to be junior rangers. Is there maybe like a weekend accelerated program? But that actually was one of our first questions. What is the age range for junior rangers?
Okay, for our junior rangers specifically, it is 6 to 11. And that's because with the entry level stuff that we do and with the group of children we typically get, some of our kids, like this year we had a good mix, a very diverse mix of junior rangers. Some of them have been kayaking. That was a new experience, or hiking or birding. Some of them had not. So kayaking may have been initially a terrifying experience that had to be worked through. So from 6 to 11, my park manager had a program that had to be kind of set aside because of the pandemic called Conservation Consequences. And so that was for older children, because one of the things across the system that we've noticed is that we're not talking to our older children, our young adults, teenagers. I work with 19, 20-year-olds as seasonal, so I have to remember, they get offended when I say kids, children. Targeting that group and creating some more programming specific to them. That was with that Conservation Consequences program with the city of Memphis. And so this upcoming year, it's up to the city of Memphis, we'll be able to continue that program. And it's like an older camp for older junior ranger camp for our teenagers. Well, we don't call it that because again, look, junior ranger sounds a little kiddie for our teenagers because they're, cool.
Well, some of us were going to try and pass as 11, so watch out for that. But are there any training or educational opportunities for maybe some of us 21 and up?
Okay, so come to the birding programs because we go over field etiquette. And so if you are interested, it doesn't have to be specifically birds. Maybe you just want to have a deeper experience with some of the parks. That could be your city park. And so I grew up, my parents took me to city parks with just the grass, the lawn, playground equipment. There's nature there. Those parks exist. And that is a space and avenue for folks who cannot necessarily go to Hot Springs National Park, which is a privilege, especially if you, like, that's why I introduced that timeline of who had access to parks and who didn't, because I had the privilege of being taken to a national park, the closest one, which was Hot Springs National Park. Everybody doesn't have that privilege. So if you are wanting to do more deeper engagement with just the outside places nearby, you come out to some of our programs, come to our hiking programs, we have an after Thanksgiving hike coming up. So if you need to exercise that stuffing off your body, we, unlike Neiman, our sister park, Neiman Shelby Bars, our trail, our Discovery Loop actually goes up and down the bluff. So you can feel like you are in the mountains with this strenuous exercise here, instead of that graceful, gentle meandering at Neiman Shelby that you can find. So just come to our programs. And then, like I said, we are building. So what we're going to do in January, I've already talked about this with the park manager, Mr. Jimmy Warren, park manager Jimmy Warren, is that we're going to have a couple of community meetings about some additional programming that we can do and see what we can do with this upcoming year with our seasonals and with 3 rangers.
Well, that is actually a great point that leads into a question we had before your presentation even started, where we had somebody in the pre-program ask a question. So TWIG has a book club, and one of the books that we read was Black Faces, White Spaces, and it was all about how outdoor spaces, outdoor recreation, a lot of Black people had just been made to feel unwelcome, and not just Black people, but all sorts of areas. It was just white dominated, and that was the underlying message and everything. So what are the state parks doing specifically? I know you hit on some things that were really interesting, but what kind of listening sessions, what kind of initiatives are out there that Tennessee State Parks are doing to really make everyone feel like this is their nature?
Okay, so our deputy commissioner, Deputy Commissioner Jim Bryson, took some time last year to go down to some of the protests. So I was working in Nashville during that period of time. It was very interesting and exciting in a lot of different ways. Our deputy commissioner took the time to go to the protests actually and talk to people, just walked around and talked to people. When he finished doing that, he sat down and reflected, and then he decided with the blessing of the commissioner to open a committee expanding and looking into our diversity efforts, not just in the core, but also across the entire state park system. So that's in its infancy stage and still building up that. So what we did is a handful of us were asked to serve or made recommendations of people to serve on this committee. We've already submitted our recommendations as of this in the middle of this year. And so a lot of those recommendations are under review because, and I understand this, there's only so many things that an agency can do there because we only have so many resources. And then some things may not be appropriate for an agency to do. Sometimes those are things that our citizens or our constituents need to do or push for and talk to their elected officials. There are some things that we can do. There's some things that we can do. And so one of the things that he's asked some of us to do is to look into increasing diversity among the Ranger Corps itself. So you saw her in the video, Lake Gardner, Park Ranger Lake Gardner. She's on the opposite side of the state on the Copperland Trail. She and I are the only 2 Black women Rangers in the Corps. We're roughly the same age. Now, we haven't been the only ones. There was one woman before she was here at T.O. Fuller about 10 to 15 years ago. She chose not to stay. She was the first Black woman, and that was only about 10, 15 years ago. And it was, again, a very different time, if you think about it. So she and I are only 2. And then there were 7 people of African descent, of known African descent, I should say, or on the Ranger Corps. Out of 250 plus people, only 7, we're down to 6 now. So that's just something to keep in mind. So we were asked what we could do to recruit and retain, and we submitted our recommendations. So we are just waiting for the next steps for that.
Yes, really glad to hear that. I think that's something that we would all like to see. And you talked a little bit about, you being a park ranger, some of your inspirations, your influences, but can you share more about your journey to actually become a ranger?
Okay, I have a confession to make. My parents were a little worried about me after college. My mother's on this call, so she can't, she won't admit it now. But they were a little worried about me. I wandered around for a bit, for roughly 7 years, 7 to 8 years after I graduated, kind of trying a lot of different stuff. I worked in schools. I worked for nonprofits. I served in the AmeriCorps. So I did state AmeriCorps, not with state parks with some churches in Knoxville, Tennessee, as well as Vista, which is a little bit different and is the domestic version of the Peace Corps and calls for a little bit more commitment and resources, personal resources. We serve at poverty level on purpose for a year, working on anti-poverty projects. It's very exciting. I did that with the city of Memphis. I was a Vista leader because of my prior AmeriCorps service. So I wandered around and did a couple of stuff. I worked on a cruise ship for a while. Right before I graduated from school, from University of Tennessee, my father suggested that I be a park ranger. At the time, I was just like, no, because I didn't want to be law enforcement. I didn't have a good opinion of law enforcement, to be perfectly honest. So I said no. And then, but because of that earlier influence, my parents, like we not always outside, but we went outside a lot. We played outside. We played in the front yard. We played in, we went to nearby parks to play. We came to T.O. Fuller State Park with my church for annual picnics. I did a summer camp here where I swam in the pool. That was something about the CCC, the original, the second location for that pool, that original pool. I swam here, and we went to Hot Springs National Park. So at some point I was just like, I think I do want to work for parks. And so I started the process of doing that. So, but that was like an 8-year period between graduating and starting that process.
That is an incredible story. And I always love hearing things like that. Cause so many times you hear like, oh my gosh, when I was 4 years old, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, but that's not real life. I mean, for some people, sure. But for most of us, you try things, you go on this winding path, and then you end up exactly where you're supposed to be. And I love hearing that. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us this morning, for sharing your story, your enthusiasm, and for everything that you do just to make Tennessee a wonderful place to live and to be, and really it just make it so incredible. Thank you for all that you do and for joining us this morning. We so appreciate you, giving you some virtual applause. And I am now going to hand it over to Gracelyn Jones, who has some incredible announcements coming up for us. Definitely, everyone, you don't want to miss some of the events that we have coming up this month.
Yes, absolutely. And Jessica, I would just echo Jocelyn. I mean, that was fantastic. I learned so much, and your positivity and enthusiasm and storytelling just like radiated through the screen. So it was just phenomenal hearing from you. So thank you so much for being here. It was absolutely phenomenal. Let's see, can everybody see my screen? Does that look good?
Yes,
okay.
We can.
Perfect. Welcome to TWIG. It is November somehow. This is actually our last speaker program of the year. Next month, we will have our members roundtable. So definitely mark your calendar for that. But thank you, Jessica, for being our last speaker of the year to round out 2021. Our mission is to empower, inspire, and connect women who are committed to environmental sustainability. As always, a huge shout out to all of our sponsors. We are so endlessly thankful for you all. We could not do what we do without you guys. So huge shout out to them. If you or your workplace is interested in becoming a sponsor, you can go to our website, TennesseeWomenInGreen.com/become a sponsor, or become a sponsor is under the Get Involved tab on our homepage. Thank you for starting or renewing your membership with TWIG. I know we have a lot of new members and first-time attendees on this call today. So, I mean, what a great introduction to TWIG. We are so thankful to have you here. Like Jocelyn said, board members have board on their name, on our little name tag. So reach out to us, feel free to chat us or shoot us an email. Our contact information is on our website. We'd love to grab coffee or do an intro call with you. And we have lots of opportunities for volunteer engagement and to get involved if you're interested. So yes, reach out and connect. Lots of events coming up in the community. So Saturday, November 6th, Beeman Park is hosting a volunteer event to beautify Beeman Park, and it is open to all ages. You can call Beeman Park or email beemanpark@nashville.gov to register. Metro Nashville Public Works is hosting a Recycle Right webinar to talk about the importance of recycling, commonly asked questions, how you can recycle in the workplace, how recycling works in Nashville in general. So this should be a really great webinar. I'm really looking forward to that. And that is on Tuesday, November 9th at noon. Friday, November 12th, there is a Sustainable Design Conference, and this is virtual, and it is all about the future of design and build sustainability, connecting with other members of the community, networking, and the importance of acting now in this field. So that should be really great. Sunday, November 21st, and this happens the third Sunday of every month. Turnip Green is partnering with Jackalope Brewing to keep our neighborhood clean with a litter pickup. It is from 11:30 to 12:30, and all volunteers get a beer token for their first pint on Jackalope, which is a great little bonus at the end of the day. And like I said, mark your calendars on Friday, December 3rd. We do have our members roundtable. And this is a very different program, just like we do, on the first Friday of every month, we all gather and we're going to be virtual. But this program, we won't have a speaker. We will have, individual speakers coming up from our seed fund. But it's mostly just to hear from our members and hear feedback and talk about our goals for next year. So definitely don't miss that. And we have a ton more events on our website. This is just a highlight reel. So if you go on our website and go to the community events section, we have, heaps and heaps of events that you can go to and register for. So definitely check that out. We also have our Lunch and Learn on Sustainable Investing coming right up. This is November 10th at 11:30 a.m. It's a webinar. And so TWIG and the Wallace Group will be presenting on sustainable investing portfolios. And now you can invest your money to reflect your values, which is super interesting. So we're excited about this one. So I will be dropping the registration link in the chat after this call, but you can also, like I said, community events page on our website, and our registration link will be there. And also Catherine, I forgot to mention, but Catherine dropped some information on our meal mixer to celebrate the climate summit, and that is in the chat. The 10 Green Land Conservancy will be looking for volunteers for their 2022 Hike-a-thon committee. So email Alice at 10green.org if you're interested in joining the team. Should be a cool opportunity. And like always, the Green Interchange has very graciously provided free coffee for anyone who's attending this meeting. Just go to Ugly Mugs in East Nashville and mention TWIG. And lastly, thank you again for spending your morning with us. It was wonderful hearing from you, Jessica. I feel like we all learned so much and just got so much out of that presentation. This is definitely one that I will be sharing with friends and coworkers who weren't able to attend this morning. But yes, again, thank you all for being here. Like I said, connect with us, teenwomeningreen@gmail.com. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out. But other than that, I hope you all have a great weekend and stay warm. It's freezing. Bye, y'all.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you
Good to
next
see
month.
everybody. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.